The sound of crystal shattering against marble flooring echoes through our home like a gunshot. I freeze at the top of the stairs, my hand gripping the banister, as my mother-in-law's voice carries up from the kitchen. "She's dragging you down, Brandon. Look at what she's done to you. Giving up your career for what? To play house with some marketing dropout? I should move, should make my presence known, but my feet won't budge, and my chest tightens with each word that follows. Mom, keep your voice down." Brandon's attempt at hushing her only makes Lorraine more insistent. "No, I won't keep my voice down. You're hemorrhaging money, and she sits here all day doing nothing. Did you know the Henderson's son just made partner? Meanwhile, you're stuck in middle management because you're too busy trying to keep her happy. I'm Delilah, and until this moment, I thought I was living someone else's dream of a perfect life. The devoted wife who gave up her executive position because her husband wanted a more traditional marriage. The woman who traded boardroom presentations for dinner parties and client meetings for charity galas. It's more complicated than that, Brandon says, his voice carrying that familiar strain of defensiveness I've grown to recognize. Delilah's been supportive. Supportive? Lorraine scoffs. She's been bleeding you dry. Those credit card statements don't lie, Brandon. I saw them on your desk. My fingers dig deeper into the banister. The credit card statements. The ones showing Brandon's mysterious withdrawals that he blamed on work expenses. You had no right to look at those. There's panic in Brandon's voice now. Those are private. I have every right when it comes to protecting my son. Did you think I wouldn't notice? The cash advances, the late-night transactions. And now you're telling me you're considering passing up the Singapore position because she doesn't want to move. The Singapore position. The one Brandon told me he'd already declined because it wasn't the right fit. It's not just about Delilah. Brandon's voice drops lower. The timing isn't right. The timing is never right with her. She's holding you back, and you're too blind to see it. Remember what happened with Catherine? She knew what she wanted, supported your ambitions. Look at her now, married to a CEO, living the life you could have had. The silence that follows feels like a blade between my ribs. I wait for Brandon to defend me, to tell his mother she's wrong. Instead, I hear him sigh. That heavy, resigned sound I've started to hate. Maybe you have a point. The words hit me like a physical blow. I step back from the stairs, my bare feet silent against the plush carpet Brandon insisted we needed. The same carpet that cost 3 times what I'd budgeted. The carpet that now feels like it's suffocating me with its pristine perfection. Of course I have a point, Lorraine continues, triumph creeping into her voice. You need to think about your future. Your real future, not this little playing house fantasy she's trapped you in. I turn away, moving silently back to our bedroom. No, his bedroom. Everything here belongs to him, doesn't it? The antique furniture Lorraine helped pick out, the artwork she deemed appropriate, the life she's apparently been orchestrating all along. My phone sits on the nightstand, and I pick it up with trembling fingers. 3 missed calls from Mia. She's been trying to tell me something about Brandon for weeks now, but I've been too busy defending him, defending us, defending this beautiful lie I've been living in. I open my laptop and start searching for the Singapore position Brandon never mentioned. It takes less than 5 minutes to find it, a director-level opportunity, posted 3 months ago. The same time Brandon started coming home later, started having those hushed phone conversations, started withdrawing cash in odd amounts. The pieces are falling into place now, forming a picture I should have seen long ago. I close the laptop and look around the room. Our perfect, curated life suddenly feeling like a stage set for someone else's play. Well, Mother Lorraine, you want to talk about bleeding people dry? Let's see who's really been drawing blood in this family. 3 days after overhearing that conversation, I'm arranging flowers in our dining room when Lorraine breezes in unannounced. She's wearing that Hermes scarf I once complimented, the one she immediately told me was quite expensive, dear. Delilah, those lilies are drooping. She adjusts her designer handbag on her arm. Brandon always loved how Catherine arranged flowers. She had such a natural talent for these things. I continue trimming stems, counting backward from 10 in my head. I wasn't aware you still kept in touch with Catherine. Oh, we have lunch every month or so. She's doing wonderfully. Just bought a summer home in the Hamptons. Lorraine runs her finger along the dining table surface. I noticed you haven't been using the furniture polish I recommended. The doorbell rings before I can respond. It's Mia, right on time, though Lorraine doesn't know I invited her. Delilah! Mia hugs me tight, her eyes darting to Lorraine. Oh, I didn't realize you had company. I was just leaving, Lorraine says, but makes no move toward the door. Brandon mentioned he's working late again tonight. 3rd time this week, isn't it? 4th, I correct her, watching her face, but you probably knew that already. Something flickers in her eyes. Concern. No, calculation. Well, he's very dedicated to his career. Unlike some people. Mia stiffens beside me. Actually, Mrs. Harrison, Delilah was the youngest VP at her firm before she chose a more meaningful path, Lorraine interrupts. Though lately, I wonder if she's really embracing her role as Brandon's wife. I set down the scissors I've been gripping. And what role would that be exactly? Supporting him, dear. Being there when he needs you. Not questioning his decisions about finances or career moves. Like Singapore. The words slip out before I can stop them. Lorraine's perfectly lined lips tighten. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Of course you do. I move closer, noting how she takes a small step back. Just like you know about the cash withdrawals. I should go, she says quickly, clutching her bag tighter. Brandon's expecting me to cover for him again? I press. Like you did with the missing money from his trust fund last year. Her face pales. How did you... I may have given up my career, Lorraine, but I didn't give up my brain. Or my contacts in the financial sector. Mia moves to stand beside me, a silent show of support that makes Lorraine's eyes narrow. You're making dangerous assumptions, Lorraine warns. Brandon won't appreciate you prying into private matters. Private like the gambling debts. Or private like the real reason Catherine left. That hits home. Lorraine's composure cracks for just a moment, but it's enough. I see the fear behind her anger. You don't know what you're talking about, she snaps, heading for the door. I'll be telling Brandon about this conversation. Please do, I call after her. And while you're at it, ask him about last Tuesday night at the Bellagio. The door slams hard enough to rattle the window panes. As soon as she's gone, my knees go weak. Mia steadies me. Holy shit, Del. That was... intense. How long have you known? About the gambling? I pieced it together after that conversation I overheard, but I needed confirmation. I sink into a chair. So I hired a private investigator last week. You what? Remember Thomas from corporate security at my old firm? He owed me a favor. I pull out my phone, showing her the photos. Brandon's been hitting casinos 3 nights a week. Lorraine's been covering his losses, using money from his trust fund. And Catherine. Left him 3 years ago after finding out about his first gambling addiction. Lorraine paid her to keep quiet and sign an NDA. I laugh bitterly. So much for her perfect life in the Hamptons. Mia studies me carefully. What are you going to do? I look at the lilies Lorraine criticized, their heads bowed but still beautiful. You know what happens when you push someone too far? When you make them feel small enough, insignificant enough? They break. No. I stand up, straightening my shoulders. They stop caring about the rules. They start making their own. Delilah. Mia's voice holds a note of concern. I gave up everything for him, Mia. My career, my independence, my self-respect. And all this time, they've been playing me for a fool. I move to the window, watching Lorraine's car disappear down the street. Well, now it's my turn to play. The casino receipts scatter across our kitchen island like fallen leaves. Brandon stares at them, his face shifting from confusion to anger to something darker. You've been following me? His voice is dangerously quiet. No, but someone has. I slide Thomas's surveillance photos across the marble surface. The Bellagio, The Venetian. That underground poker room on 4th Street. Should I continue? He snatches the photos, ripping one in half. You had no right. Like you had no right to drain our savings. I tap the bank statements. $50,000 in 3 months, Brandon. Were you planning to tell me before or after we were bankrupt? It's my money, he snaps, pacing. I earned it. And the trust fund? The money your father left specifically for our future children. He freezes. How did you... Your mother's not the only one who can access financial records. I force myself to maintain eye contact. Does she know you're gambling again? Or is she still pretending those withdrawals are for business investments? The sound of his fist hitting the counter makes me flinch. You've been talking to Catherine. No, but I should have. Maybe she could have warned me about what I was really marrying into. His laugh is bitter, hollow. God, you're just like her. Always judging, always trying to fix me. Fix you? I gave up my entire career because you said it would make you happy. Happy? He rounds on me. You think playing housewife makes up for the constant pressure? The disappointment in your eyes every time I don't meet your precious standards. A key turns in the front door. Lorraine, right on cue. She takes in the scene. The scattered papers, Brandon's rage, my rigid posture. What's going on? She rushes to Brandon's side. Honey, you're shaking. She knows, he says. About everything. Lorraine's face hardens. What have you done? What have I done? I laugh, the sound sharp enough to cut. That's rich coming from the woman who's been enabling her son's addiction for years. It's not an addiction, Lorraine snaps. Brandon's just been under tremendous stress, which you've obviously contributed to. $300,000, I interrupt. That's how much you've covered for him in the past year alone. Does that sound like stress to you? Brandon moves toward me, but I hold up my phone. One step closer, and these records go to the board of directors. I wonder how they'd feel about their rising star gambling away client funds. You wouldn't dare, Lorraine hisses. Try me. I've already sent copies to my lawyer. Your lawyer? Brandon's voice cracks. Since when do you have a lawyer? Since I found out my husband's been lying to me about everything from casino visits to job offers in Singapore. The color drains from his face. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You never wanted a wife, Brandon. You wanted a trophy to prove to Mommy that you could do better than Catherine. Someone to blame when you couldn't control your impulses. That's enough. Lorraine steps between us. Brandon, darling, go upstairs. I'll handle this. Handle this? I move closer to her. Like you handled Catherine. How much did that NDA cost you? Brandon's head snaps up. What NDA? For the first time, I see real fear in Lorraine's eyes. Delilah's confused. Am I? Should we call Catherine and ask about the $100,000 you paid her to keep quiet about Brandon's first gambling spiral? Mom? Brandon's voice sounds small, childlike. What is she talking about? Lorraine reaches for him, but he backs away. I was protecting you. By lying to me. He looks between us, lost. All this time, I did what I had to do, Lorraine insists. You weren't ready to face... Face what? I cut in. That your perfect son has a problem you can't fix with money and manipulation. Brandon grabs his keys. I need to get out of here. Brandon, wait, Lorraine calls after him, but the door slams shut. We stand in silence, these two women who loved Brandon in such different ways, listening to his car screech out of the driveway. Are you happy now? Lorraine's voice trembles. You've destroyed everything. I gather the scattered evidence, tucking it safely away. No, Lorraine, you did that all on your own. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. 3 days after Brandon stormed out, I'm pulling weeds in our front garden when Oliver from next door approaches, holding a stack of mail. These came to my house by mistake. He hesitates, then adds, including one from Pacific Coast Casino Resort. My fingers dig into the soil. Thanks. Listen, he glances around before lowering his voice. I couldn't help overhearing the argument the other night, thin walls and all. I stand, brushing dirt from my knees. I'm sorry about that. Don't be. My ex-wife's family was similar, always covering up inconvenient truths, always manipulating the narrative. He hands me the mail. Just be careful. People like that. They don't like losing control. Before I can respond, a familiar black Mercedes pulls into my driveway. Brandon steps out, looking immaculate in his suit, as if the last 3 days never happened. "We'll talk later," Oliver murmurs, retreating to his yard. Brandon watches him go, his smile not reaching his eyes. Making friends with the neighbors. Someone has to maintain appearances. I turn toward the house, but he catches my arm. "We need to talk." Inside, Brandon paces our kitchen like a caged animal while I stand perfectly still, the casino statement burning in my pocket. "I've been thinking," he starts. "You were right, about some things." "Some things?" "The gambling, the lies." He runs a hand through his hair. "I'm getting help, real help this time, not what Mom did before." Something in his voice makes me look closer. The perfect suit can't hide the shadows under his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. "Where have you been staying?" "The Four Seasons." He laughs hollowly. "Mom's been calling non-stop, but I needed space to think." "About?" "Us, the Singapore position, everything." He moves closer. "I want to make this right, Delilah. We could start fresh there, away from all this, away from her." The hope in his voice almost breaks my resolve. Almost. "When did you lose the Peterson account?" He freezes. "What?" I pull out my phone, showing him the email I received an hour ago from my old colleague at Peterson Corp. Their entire portfolio, $60 million. "You lost it all at the Bellagio last month, didn't you?" "You don't understand." "Actually, I do. The Singapore position isn't an escape plan, it's damage control." I meet his eyes. "How long before the board finds out?" His facade cracks. "I can fix this. I just need time." "Time to what? Gamble more client money? Let your mother cover it up again?" "You think you know everything," he snarls, mask fully slipping now. "You think you're so clever with your private investigators and your threats, but you have no idea what I'm capable of." I'm learning. The doorbell rings. Through the window, I see Lorraine's car. "Perfect timing," I mutter. Brandon moves to answer it, but I hold up my hand. "Before you let her in, you should know. I spoke to Catherine yesterday." The color drains from his face. "You what?" "Turns out NDAs don't cover criminal activities, like embezzlement or fraud." "You're bluffing." I pull out another envelope. "Want to bet?" Lorraine's knocking becomes more insistent. "You'll destroy everything," he whispers. "No, Brandon. You already did that. I'm just deciding what to salvage from the wreckage." He stares at me for a long moment, and I see something shift in his eyes. The same look I saw in Lorraine's when she realized she was losing control. "Mum was right about you," he says finally. "You were never really one of us." "Thank God for that." I walk past him to open the door, where Lorraine stands with a familiar manila envelope, the one I planted in Oliver's mailbox 3 days ago. "We need to talk," she says, her voice tight with fury. I look between mother and son, these two people who thought they could break me, control me, mold me into their perfect victim. "Yes," I agree, stepping aside to let her in. "We certainly do." The envelope Lorraine brought contains photos, surveillance shots of me meeting with Catherine at a cafe last week. She spreads them across our dining table like playing cards. "Quite the little investigation you've been conducting," she says. "But two can play that game." Brandon hovers near the doorway, his expression unreadable. I notice his hand keeps twitching toward his phone. "Those are interesting," I say, sliding one closer. "Did your private investigator happen to catch what Catherine gave me?" Lorraine's smile falters. "What are you talking about?" I retrieve my laptop, opening it to display a video file. Catherine's voice fills the room. The transfers were always through Lorraine's personal account. She said it was to protect Brandon's reputation, but really... Brandon steps forward. "Turn it off." "Why?" Don't you want to hear how your mother orchestrated your first stint in rehab? How she paid the facility to falsify your records? That's enough? Lorraine slams her hand on the table. It's never enough with you two, is it? I stand, moving toward the kitchen. The lying, the covering up, the manipulation, it's like breathing to you. Everything I did was to protect my son. Protect him? I laugh. You enabled him right into losing $60 million of client money. Brandon's head snaps up. You told her. She figured it out, I say. Just like she figured out about Singapore, about Catherine, about everything. And now what? Lorraine's voice turns cold. You think exposing all this will accomplish anything besides destroying everyone involved? I pull out my phone, showing them the email draft to the board of directors. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Brandon moves suddenly, reaching for my phone, but I step back. Don't. You can't do this, he pleads. They'll press charges. They should have years ago. I look at Lorraine. Before you buried the evidence of his first embezzlement. She goes very still. How did you... Catherine kept records. Insurance, she called it. Turns out she was smarter than you gave her credit for. A knock at the door makes us all jump. Through the window, I see Oliver standing there, right on schedule. Expecting someone. Brandon's voice has an edge. Actually, yes. I move to answer it. Oliver used to work for the Securities and Exchange Commission. He had some interesting insights about financial fraud cases. Lorraine grabs my arm. Wait, please. We can make a deal. A deal? I pull free. Like the one you made with Catherine, or the one you're planning with the Singapore firm. I'll give you whatever you want, Brandon says quickly. Money, the house, anything. What I want? I turn to face them both. I want the last 3 years of my life back. I want my career back. I want every moment I wasted trying to be perfect for you, trying to earn your approval, trying to be worthy of your precious family name. Oliver knocks again. You're not just threatening Brandon's future, Lorraine warns. Think about what this will do to you, to your reputation. My reputation? I reach for the door. Unlike you, I don't need to hide behind lies anymore. Wait, Brandon steps forward, desperation clear in his voice. What if I turn myself in? Voluntarily? Would that be enough? I pause, hand on the doorknob. Enough for what? To keep this between us. To give me a chance to make it right. Lorraine gasps. Brandon, no. It's over, Mom, he says quietly. She won. We both know it. I study them. Mother and son, their perfect facade finally cracking. But I've learned too well from their games to trust easily. You're right about one thing, I say, opening the door to Oliver. It is over, but this isn't about winning anymore. Oliver enters, carrying a briefcase full of documents, copies of everything I've gathered, ready for the SEC investigation that will expose it all. This is about justice, I continue, watching their faces fall as they realize the true scope of what I've set in motion. And justice doesn't make deals. The Harrison family's annual charity gala feels like a stage set for a Greek tragedy. Crystal chandeliers mock me with their sparkle while Brandon works the room, playing the reformed prodigal son. Lorraine hovers nearby, her designer dress as carefully constructed as her lies. I adjust my evening gown, the last gift Brandon gave me before everything unraveled, and check my phone. No message from Oliver about the SEC filing. Quite the turnout, Mia whispers, appearing at my elbow, though I notice Catherine declined her invitation. She's probably in the Hamptons, I murmur, spending her hush money. Brandon catches my eye across the room, his smile faltering. 3 days have passed since our confrontation, and he's been performing damage control with remarkable dedication. Voluntary rehab enrollment, tearful confessions to the board, all orchestrated by Lorraine, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon's voice carries through the ballroom. If I could have your attention... My heart stops. This wasn't part of the plan. Recent events have made me realize the importance of honesty, he continues, of facing one's demons openly. The crowd murmurs appreciatively. I feel Mia's hand tighten on my arm. My wife, Delilah, has been my rock through this difficult time. He extends his hand toward me. Darling, would you join me? Every eye turns my way. This is his masterstroke, using my own weapon against me. Public confession as shield rather than sword. I move through the crowd, feeling Lorraine's triumphant gaze. Brandon takes my hand, his grip just tight enough to warn. Delilah discovered my gambling addiction, he announces, voice breaking perfectly. She could have exposed me, ruined me. Instead, she chose love, chose to help me heal. The audience sighs collectively. I see board members nodding, their earlier suspicions melting under the warmth of redemption. Which makes this next part harder, he continues, because while investigating my addiction, Delilah developed an obsession of her own. My blood freezes. She began fabricating evidence, convinced of conspiracies that existed only in her mind. He turns to me, eyes glistening. The stress of supporting me through my recovery. It was too much. Brandon, I start, but he squeezes my hand harder. She even involved our neighbor in her delusions, convinced him to file false reports with the SEC. Oliver. They got to Oliver. But with proper help, Lorraine steps forward, right on cue. And the support of family will get through this together. The room spins slightly. Every carefully gathered piece of evidence, every documented conversation, now tainted by the brush of mental instability. I'm not... I try to pull away, but Brandon's grip is iron. It's okay, darling, he says loudly. You're safe now. We'll get you the help you need. Mia starts forward, but security blocks her path. I see them now, the subtle positioning of guards near every exit. You really think anyone will believe this? I whisper. They already do, he murmurs back. After all, what's more believable? That I'm a reformed addict seeking help, or that my mentally unstable wife fabricated an elaborate conspiracy? The crowd watches with sympathetic eyes as I struggle to maintain composure. Even the board members who question Brandon now look at me with pity. The car is waiting, Lorraine says softly. The facility has excellent reviews. Very discreet. I scan the room desperately. Mia is arguing with security. Oliver is nowhere to be seen. My phone, my last link to the evidence, sits in my clutch on a distant table. Don't fight this, Brandon warns. You'll only make it worse. The room continues to spin as reality sets in. They've outplayed me. Every move I made, they twisted into proof of my instability. Every ally I gathered, they've neutralized or discredited. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon addresses the crowd again. Please excuse us. My wife needs her rest. As they lead me toward the exit, I catch a glimpse of our reflection in the ballroom's mirrors. The perfect family tableau. Brandon, the concerned husband, Lorraine, the supportive mother, and me, the unstable wife who saw conspiracy in coincidence and malice in love. The perfect ending to their perfect lie. The facility's garden is immaculate, like everything else in Brandon's world. I sit on a wrought iron bench, watching orderlies patrol the perimeter, while Lorraine arranges my voluntary commitment papers inside. Your phone, Mrs. Harrison. A nurse holds out her hand expectantly. I reach into my clutch, fingers brushing past my phone to grasp something else. Of course, just one moment. The intercom crackles. Security to the main entrance. Security to the main entrance. Through the glass doors, I see Mia arguing with the receptionist, right on schedule. Mrs. Harrison? The nurse steps closer. I stand slowly, pulling out not my phone but a small recorder. Actually, I think we should wait for the others. Brandon bursts through the garden doors, Lorraine close behind. What's happening? They said... The recorder clicks on. His own voice fills the garden. Transfer another $1 million from the Peterson account. No, Mother won't notice. She never checks the offshore numbers. Brandon freezes. Lorraine's face goes ash white. Turn that off, she hisses. Why? It gets better. I raise my voice slightly, especially the part about bribing the rehab facility to falsify records. The nurse backs away, uncertainty replacing professional detachment. You're only proving my point about your mental state, Brandon says, but his voice wavers. Am I? Because the SEC just received copies of every conversation, every transaction, every piece of evidence I've gathered. Oliver wasn't working alone. Lorraine's composure cracks. You're bluffing. We checked. You checked Oliver's submissions. But did you check Catherine's? Brandon's head snaps up. Catherine? She's been working with me for months. Turns out she kept everything from last time. Every document, every transfer, every conversation. Insurance, remember? You can't prove, Lorraine starts. Actually, she can. Catherine's voice cuts through the garden as she steps through the doors, followed by 2 SEC agents. And I brought friends. Brandon lunges for the recorder, but I'm ready. I step aside, watching him stumble as years of careful manipulation crumble around him. Brandon Harrison? One agent steps forward. We have some questions about the Peterson account. This is ridiculous, Lorraine interjects. My son is seeking treatment. For a gambling addiction you enabled, I cut in, after covering up his first embezzlement scandal. You don't understand, Brandon pleads with the agents. She's unstable, she's been fabricating the offshore accounts in the Caymans. Catherine steps closer. The falsified rehab records, the bribes to keep the board quiet, were we fabricating those too? Lorraine moves to stand between Brandon and the agents. Whatever you think you know, we know everything, I interrupt. Every lie, every cover-up, every manipulation. The perfect family facade ends today. Brandon's face contorts. You really think anyone will believe you over us? We're the Harrisons? I laugh. That name won't mean much after today. The board members you tried to convince of my instability. They're receiving detailed records of your fraud as we speak. You'll go down with us, Lorraine warns. No, I won't, because unlike you, I kept evidence of my own innocence. Every threat, every manipulation, every attempt to gaslight me into submission, it's all documented. The agents move forward as Brandon's composure finally shatters. This isn't fair, he snarls. You were nothing before me. Nothing. No, Brandon, I was everything before you. And now? I remove my wedding ring, letting it fall into the garden's fountain. Now I'm free. Mrs. Harrison, one agent says, we'll need you to come with us to make a formal statement. Of course. I turn to Catherine. Thank you. She nods, a survivor's understanding passing between us. As the agents lead Brandon and Lorraine away, I hear his mother's last desperate attempt. We can fix this. We can still... No, Mother. Brandon's voice breaks. We can't fix anything anymore. I watch them disappear through the doors, their perfectly crafted world collapsing behind them. Mia appears at my side, squeezing my hand. You okay? I look at the fountain, where my wedding ring glints beneath the surface like fool's gold. No, I answer honestly, but I will be. The doorbell chimes as I pack the last box from my home office. Through the window, I see Lorraine standing on the porch, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. I consider not answering. The trial ended yesterday. Brandon's guilty plea, the board's decision, the media frenzy, all of it finally over. But something in her posture makes me pause. I didn't expect to see you here, I say, opening the door. She looks smaller somehow, her perfectly curated appearance showing cracks. The house sold quickly. Everything sells quickly when it's priced to pay restitution. She flinches but doesn't leave. Brandon asked about you at the facility. The real facility this time? The words come out sharper than intended. Yes. She shifts, uncomfortable. He's different there, without me to... enable him, protect him, she corrects, then sighs. Though I suppose they're the same thing, aren't they? I lean against the door frame, studying her. Why are you here, Lorraine? I need to understand. She meets my eyes. You could have just left, divorced him, moved on. Why go through all this? Because leaving wouldn't have stopped you. I gesture to the moving boxes visible through the door. You would have found another Delilah. Another Catherine. Another woman to mold and break and blame. We didn't break you. No, I agree. You made me stronger. She opens her bag, pulls out an envelope. Brandon wanted you to have this. He's not allowed contact, but... I take it, recognizing his handwriting. Did you read it? No. A ghost of her old authority creeps in. Though, as his mother, you don't have that power anymore. The words hang between us. She looks past me at the empty house, at the life she tried so hard to control. What do I do now? She whispers, more to herself than me. Learn to let go. I step back inside. Start with yourself. She nods slowly, turns to leave, then stops. For what it's worth, I am sorry. I know. I watch her walk away, her shoulders straight despite everything. That's why it worked. After she's gone, I open Brandon's letter. His words blur together. Apologies, explanations, promises of change. At the bottom, a single line stands clear. You were right about everything, except one thing. I did love you. I fold the letter, slip it into a box labeled Past. Through the window, I see Oliver tending his garden, Catherine's car pulling into Mia's driveway. My unlikely allies, now genuine friends. The doorbell rings again. This time it's the real estate agent, papers in hand. Ready to close this chapter, Ms. Walker? I smile at the sound of my old name, reclaimed like everything else. Almost. I walk through each room one last time. The kitchen where I first heard their plotting. The stairs where I stood frozen, listening to my life unravel. The bedroom where I planned my resurrection. In the garden, I pause at the fountain. My wedding ring still glints beneath the water, a reminder of promises made and broken. I consider retrieving it, selling it like everything else. Instead, I leave it there, a small piece of fool's gold for the next owner to find. Let them wonder about its story, about the woman who chose truth over perfection, justice over peace, herself over everything. My phone buzzes, a message from my old firm. The position is still open if I want it, not as a trophy wife playing at career woman, but as the executive I always was. I take one last look at the house, at the carefully constructed prison that became my launching pad. In the end, Brandon and Lorraine taught me something valuable. The most dangerous weapon isn't revenge or money or power. It's the moment you stop believing their lies and start telling your truth. I lock the door, hand over the keys, and walk away without looking back. The future stretches before me, unscripted and gloriously my own. Some would call it revenge, I call it justice, but mostly I call it freedom.